Welcome to the final part of our Heritage Talk on Environmental Archaeology, discussing the results from various sites.
And in a completely different side, we have also waterlogged plant remains in completely different types of archaeological sites. So, for example, in Bath Abbey, our colleagues were digging under the current abbey to allow for structural work to be undertaken, and they have found lots of interesting artifacts and remains from medieval buildings and the Norman Abbey, but also they have found very interesting deposit from the Georgian period, late 18th century, with waterlogged plant remains that inform about what people were eating in the refreshments areas in the vicinity of Bath Abbey. So there are seeds of apple and blackberry and elder, which suggests maybe people were having fruit cocktails. We are now traveling to the Salisbury Plain to study some of the sites discovered during the Army Basing program. If you haven't heard about this, it's development of large housing areas for Army people who are returning to the UK from Germany, and this has been done very near the World Heritage Site around Stonehenge, and we have found really interesting archaeological sites. One of them is Bulford, where we found Doublehenge monument from the Bronze Age, which has been scheduled, so the housing state is not here anymore. And we have also found lots of evidence from an earlier period. These all are Neolithic pits, which is, for me, the most interesting part of the site. And these Neolithic pits have provided lots of interesting artifacts. They have different fills and flints and chalk objects that are very, very exciting for people who are excited about flints. However, for me, the most interesting part are the hazelnuts. So we have lots of charred hazelnuts, which indicate or highlight the importance of wild plant exploitation in early farming societies. However, we find hazelnuts in many archaeological sites. So why is this important? Well, because they are really, really abundant, and also because we have found the kernels of the hazelnuts as well in some of the pits. Finding the kernels is a very, very rare scenario, which is only produced in a few cases in specific fire and temperature conditions. And it's probably a result of roasting hazelnuts in underground pits. So there's been quite a lot of experimental work trying to replicate scenarios where you can produce this sort of assemblage. And one of the most likely explanations is pit roasting. So we've built this model. This is a section of a pit, and this has been done by our colleague Andy Soul, who's an archaeologist as well. He does really good models. And this pit has been lined with sand, which is a heat conduction material. The hazelnuts have been put inside. We are speaking about thousands of hazelnuts here. Then the hazelnuts are covered with sand, and then a fire is made on top. This would be a very efficient way of roasting hazelnuts in bulk, and this would produce the accidental carbonization of a few of the hazelnuts. And we think that this is the case for some of the pits in Wolford. Another site, very exciting in terms of archaeology, not so much in terms of archaeobotany, was Lark Hill. There was a Neolithic coastward enclosure where we found this really interesting feature, and it's been preserved as well. Very little or very few charred plant remains were found in this site, unfortunately, but we found some imprints in cremation urns. So, for example, this is a barley imprint from this vessel. Another site that we've dug from the Salisbury office in Hampshire is a Bleak Hill Quarry. This is similar to Bulford and probably also Neolithic. I don't have ready common dates yet. I'm hoping to obtain some dates in these serials here, but it has all the indicators suggesting that this is early farming deposit with importance of cereal cultivation and wild plant gathering. So we have the typical hazelnuts as well. But we have all the special things. So, for example, a huge deposit of roasted acorns. We think they are roasted because, again, as kernels of hazelnuts, these type of remains are not normally preserved in archaeological sites. Other types of plant remains from this site are sloes and crab apples. And finally, the last of these sites of the last hunter-gatherers and early farmers is Llangefni, a site in Wales, where the archaeology again wasn't really exciting. There were a few post holes and a few pits, and people digging them thought that these were Romano-British, and actually there was a lot of evidence of the Romano-British period. However, some of the pits were also Neolithic, and we have redecarbon dated some of the grains, and we've obtained very, very early dates for the cereals. So the cereals would have arrived from the Near East or Southwest Asia, because the earliest dates for cereals in Britain in the coast are older than the earliest dates of Britain of cereals inland. We think that probably these domesticates were brought by sea, and Wales is one of the cases in which people arrived earlier. And to conclude, I have the last slide, which is Serford, where there is evidence for a very long occupation from the Bronze Age. We've discovered these huge monumental barrows from that period. The environmental evidence from them is not great either. The site was also used in the Iron Age and the Romano-British period. So, for example, this is a crop dryer that was used in the Romano-British period to dry grain, and we have lots of cereal grain from here. But for me, the most exciting find or archaeobotanical find in this site is this grain. This is free threshing grain, wheat in particular, and this type of cereal is widespread from the early medieval period onwards. And we had, prior to finding this, we had very little evidence of this period in this site. So if we hadn't found this grain, this period of occupation in the site would have been completely undetected. So thanks to environmental archaeology, we have been able to find out that people were inhabiting this area as well in the early medieval period. And this is my selection of favorite sites from my experience in Wessex Archaeology. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for watching our Heritage Talk, an introduction to environmental archaeology, and thank you to our speaker, Inés López-Dóriga, for giving an overview of what environmental archaeology entails. Keep an eye out for future Heritage Talks across our social media outlets.